Part 5. Crossroads. October 1847. For the first time in 22 years of marriage, Kevin and Anne prepared to walk in opposite directions. Neither wanted to speak of it as a farewell. Instead, they called it for a while. It was easier that way. Maeve believed it too. "When things get better," she said one evening as she folded her one good dress, "Father will come to England and we'll all have a little house together." Kevin smiled. "I hope so, sweetheart." He did not have the heart to tell her that he doubted he would ever see England. Anne's sister Bridget had enclosed enough money in her letter to pay for Anne and Maeve's passage from Cork to Liverpool. The coins had clearly been saved over many months. Kevin turned them over in his hand. It must have cost them dearly. Anne nodded. "They've never forgotten where they came from." "When was the last time you saw Bridget?" "Before Sean was born." 19 years. "I almost don't know what she looks like now." Kevin smiled gently. "You'll know her." "I hope she knows me." The morning they left, Father Sullivan met them outside the chapel. He blessed each of them in turn. When he came to Kevin, he held the older man's shoulders. "Don't let bitterness become your master." Kevin looked toward the ruined fields that had once held cottages. "I'll try." The priest searched his face. "The famine has stolen much. It has. But do not let it steal the man you are." Kevin nodded. Though neither of them knew how difficult those words would become in the months ahead. At Cork Harbour, hundreds waited to board ships. Families clung to one another. Children cried. Bundles of clothing lay piled beside trunks and crates. The air smelled of coal smoke, seawater, and fear. Maeve had never seen so many people. "Where are they all going?" "Everywhere," Anne answered quietly. "America, Canada, England. Anywhere they think tomorrow may be kinder than today." Kevin stood silently beside them. He had imagined saying something profound, something his wife and daughter would remember for the rest of their lives. Instead, when the moment came, he found there were no words. The ship's bell rang. Passengers began filing up the gangplank. Bridget's money had purchased only the cheapest accommodation below decks. It didn't matter. It was passage. It was hope. Anne turned towards Kevin. "I don't want to go." "I know." "I don't want to leave you." "I know." She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small silver crucifix that had belonged to her mother. "I want you to have this." Kevin shook his head. "No." "You'll need it. So will you." She smiled sadly. "I have Maeve." He accepted it carefully. The silver had worn smooth from generations of hands. Maeve threw her arms around her father. "When will you come?" Kevin knelt before her. "As soon as I can." She accepted the answer without question. Children often believe promises because they cannot imagine adults lying. Kevin kissed her forehead. "Mind your mother." "I will. And remember Ireland. I'll never forget." She pressed Michael's little carved boat into Kevin's hand. "You keep this until I come home." His eyes filled with tears. "I will." The ship slowly pulled away from the quay. Anne stood at the rail, one hand resting on Maeve's shoulder. Kevin remained where he was long after they had become little more than distant figures. Only when the vessel disappeared beyond the harbour mouth did he finally turn away. He had never felt so completely alone. 3 days later, carrying little more than a blanket, a change of clothes, and the small wooden boat, Kevin began walking north. County Roscommon lay nearly 200 miles away. He had no horse, no cart, very little money. Most nights he slept in barns or beneath hedgerows. Sometimes charitable families shared bread. Sometimes priests offered a corner of a parish house. Often he simply went hungry. The roads themselves told the story of Ireland. Abandoned cottages, roofless cabins, fields overtaken by weeds, workhouses surrounded by desperate crowds. Every village seemed quieter than the last. Every mile carried fresh evidence that the country itself was bleeding away. Near Limerick, Kevin fell into step beside an elderly schoolmaster named Eamon Walsh. The old man carried more books than clothing. "You've lost your home." It wasn't a question. Kevin nodded. "And your family?" "My wife and daughter have gone to Liverpool." The schoolmaster sighed. "My own son sailed for Boston." They walked in silence for a time. Finally, Eamon spoke again. "I've been teaching children for 40 years. Kevin glanced at him. "I buried more pupils in the last 3 than in all the years before." He paused. "The famine will end one day. I pray it does." But what worries me most, what? The bitterness. Kevin looked ahead. What do you mean? We can rebuild cottages, we can replant fields, we can fill empty schools. But once the people lose faith in justice, he shook his head, that takes generations to mend. As Kevin entered Roscommon, the countryside bore different scars. There had been fewer fishing villages here, more tenant farms, more grazing land, and more evictions. His brother Patrick met him outside a modest, whitewashed cottage. For a long moment neither man spoke. Then Patrick embraced him fiercely. You've grown thin. So have you. Patrick smiled sadly. Come inside. His wife Catherine welcomed Kevin as though he had never been away. There was cabbage soup waiting, fresh brown bread, a place beside the fire. For the first time in weeks, Kevin felt something close to peace. Yet Roscommon was not Kerry. The conversations were different. At night the men spoke quietly after supper. Always the children had gone to bed, always with the shutters closed. They've cleared another village. They burned every roof. The sheriff brought soldiers. Someone ought to make them answer. When Kevin entered the room, the conversations often stopped. Patrick noticed. They're only talking. Kevin nodded, but he sensed there was more. On Saturday evening, Patrick finally spoke openly. There are men meeting. Kevin looked up. What sort of men? The sort who've had enough. I've heard that before. They're not politicians. Who are they? Patrick hesitated. Farmers, labourers, schoolmasters, blacksmiths, men who think the law has forgotten ordinary people. Kevin stared into the fire. And what do they intend to do? Patrick chose his words carefully. They intend to make certain the landlords remember. Outside, the wind rattled the cottage shutters. Kevin said nothing. He thought of his own ruined home, of Sean and Michael beneath the sea, of Anne and Maeve somewhere on the Irish Sea bound for Liverpool. For the first time since leaving Kerry, he felt something stirring inside him that grief alone could not explain. Not hatred, not yet, but something close. Far away in another part of Roscommon, 5 men gathered quietly in the back room of an abandoned forge. Their faces were hidden beneath the flickering light of a single lantern. One of them unfolded a map. Another read aloud the names of landlords whose evictions had become notorious throughout the county. Among those names was one that every man in Roscommon knew, Dennis Mahon. None of them knew that within weeks his name would be spoken across all of Ireland, and that Kevin Kiely's path would become entangled with that history in ways he could never have foreseen. Part 6. The Oath. County Roscommon, October 1847. Kevin soon learned that Roscommon carried its anger differently than Kerry. In Kerry, grief had settled over the countryside like a heavy fog. People mourned quietly. They buried their dead, boarded emigrant ships, or watched their homes disappear beneath the landlord's crowbars. Roscommon still grieved, but here people whispered. Patrick rose before daylight each morning to tend the small holding he rented from a local landowner. The farm was hardly enough to support his family. One failed harvest would ruin them. Like every tenant in the county, Patrick knew it. We're only borrowing tomorrow, he often said. Kevin understood exactly what he meant. Nothing felt permanent anymore. Not homes, not work, not families, not even hope. One evening after supper, Patrick looked toward the children sleeping in the loft. Catherine, he said quietly, would you give us a little while? His wife nodded. She had expected this conversation. Without a word, she gathered the sewing basket and disappeared into the adjoining room. Patrick waited until the door closed. Then he spoke. I've been keeping something from you. Kevin smiled faintly. I suspected as much. Patrick reached beneath a loose floorboard. From the hiding place, he removed a folded green ribbon. Nothing more, just a strip of faded cloth. What is it? It lets others know where I stand. Kevin frowned. Ribbon men? Patrick nodded slowly. So that's what they're calling themselves now. The names change, the reasons don't. Patrick explained that secret societies had existed in rural Ireland for generations. Sometimes they protected tenants. Sometimes they settled local disputes. Sometimes they crossed dangerous lines. They're not all the same, Patrick cautioned. Some men simply warn landlords. Others? Patrick sighed. Others believe warnings have failed. Kevin remained silent. He remembered Father Sullivan's words, "Do not let bitterness become your master." Several nights later, Patrick asked a question, "Will you walk with me?" "Where?" "You'll see." They left after darkness had settled across the fields. The moon offered little light. Patrick seemed to know every hedge and every stone wall. Eventually they reached an abandoned lime kiln hidden among old trees. A lantern glowed faintly inside. Patrick knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. The heavy wooden door opened. There were perhaps a dozen men inside, a blacksmith, 2 school teachers, several farmers, a cooper, a former soldier, one elderly man Kevin recognized from Mass. No one used surnames, no one asked unnecessary questions. The atmosphere was serious rather than threatening. These were ordinary men. That, somehow, made the gathering more unsettling. An older man named Seamus appeared to lead the meeting. His voice was calm. "We're not thieves." General heads nodded. "We're not murderers." More nods. "We are husbands, fathers, brothers, neighbours." He looked around the room. "But if the law protects only wealth, who protects the poor?" No one answered. The silence itself was the answer. One by one, the men spoke. A farmer described watching his roof pulled down. A widow told how her lease had been cancelled after 30 years. Another man had buried 4 children during the famine. Each story resembled Kevin's own. Different names, different villages, the same ending: loss. When it came Kevin's turn, he hesitated. "I come from Kerry." The room became still. "I paid every rent." "So did many here," someone said quietly. "They tore down my cottage." More nods. "My 2 sons," his voice caught, "they were lost at sea." No one interrupted. "My wife and daughter have gone to England." The old blacksmith removed his cap. Several others did the same. Not from custom, from respect. After the meeting, Seamus walked beside Kevin. "You carry much sorrow." "I do." "Sorrow can make a man wiser." He paused. "Or more dangerous." Kevin looked at him. "Which do you hope for?" "I haven't decided." Over the following weeks, Kevin attended more meetings. Most involved no violence. The men shared news, collected money for widows, warned one another about planned evictions, helped families move livestock before seizures, escorted threatened tenants home after dark. It reminded Kevin in some ways of the neighbourliness he had known in Kerry, only now everything happened in secret. Yet rumours travelled alongside the meetings. A landlord's hayrick burnt down during the night. A threatening letter appeared nailed to another man's gate. Someone fired a shot through the window of an estate office. No one admitted responsibility, no one condemned it either. The county seemed to be holding its breath. One afternoon, Patrick and Kevin travelled into Roscommon town. Outside the market house, people clustered around a newspaper being read aloud. The name Dennis Mahon came up repeatedly. Kevin listened. Mahon's estate had become the subject of fierce criticism. There had been large-scale assisted emigration, evictions, families scattered across the Atlantic. Opinions differed sharply. Some insisted Mahon had done more than most landlords to help impoverished tenants. Others argued that whatever his intentions, too many families had been forced from their homes. The debate grew heated. Patrick gently tugged Kevin's sleeve. "Come away." As they walked home, Kevin asked quietly, "Do people hate him that much?" Patrick answered with equal care, "Some hate what they believe he represents." That night, Kevin could not sleep. He sat outside beneath a sky bright with autumn stars. In his hand rested the little wooden boat Michael had carved. He turned it over slowly. The knife marks were still visible. Every cut made by his son's hands. He thought of Sean laughing into the wind, of Maeve sailing toward England, of Anne beginning a new life without him. The injustice of it all pressed heavily upon him, but another thought troubled him even more. He could feel anger taking root. Not the hot anger that flares and fades, something colder, something patient, something that waited. He remembered Father Sullivan's warning. He whispered it aloud. "Do not let bitterness become your master." The words sounded convincing. Whether he still believed them, he couldn't say. A week later, Patrick returned from market carrying troubling news. "There are more soldiers in the county." "Why?" "The authorities believe something is coming." "What?" Patrick shook his head. "No one knows." Across Roscommon, rumours multiplied. Landlords hired extra guards. Magistrates travelled armed. Secret meetings became even more secret. Everyone sensed the county had reached a turning point. No one knew exactly when it would come, only that it was drawing closer, and though Kevin had never lifted a hand against another man in anger, history was quietly pulling him toward an event that would forever alter the course of his life.